every set of pens I've ever been to are different. They're set up different, they flow different. And I've never met a producer that there's not something about their facilities they wouldn't change. And so what I encourage people to do if you're looking at building a new set, getting into the cattle business, or updating the facilities that you have, is to visit as many producers that you can. Get to see what they have, what they like, what they don't, and because everybody is under different constraints. This barn was already here when they put this alleyway in, so they were constrained with certain things. You're not going to have those same constraints, and so just like this alley, when we moved these cattle in the first time, it's pretty tight for these big cows to turn around in. And if you look at the plans, if you pull up Bud Box design, it's going to be a wider, longer alley. Okay. The other thing is a lot of times on those Bud Boxes, they have a straight alleyway. Well, they couldn't do that in here. So you've got a curved one. So they've merged a couple of different philosophies, and it's not right or wrong. It's just what works here. Okay. And so the thing that anytime that you are looking at doing a new facility, flexibility can be your friend, because there are going to be things that you don't foresee that the cattle, or it's either going to make them nervous, or they're not want to flow, or there'll be a corner that they get stuck in every time you bring cattle in. And so if you've got flexibility, you can change those things without a lot. Once you've welded it in, you're committed. So this is what you're going to have. And so some of those things, but it's really about safety, and it's about what you feel comfortable with. When it comes to facilities, the other thing just with cattle handling, and it goes through, and there's diagrams on there of the cattle's flight zone, okay? Another word for flight zone is personal space. So we all have personal space, and there's a certain distance with people that we know or we don't know about how close we feel comfortable with them being before we start moving away, correct? Same thing with cattle, okay? So I don't know these cattle. I haven't ever been out here on this ranch, and so my flight zone is going to be different than the owner. When those cattle are used to him, a flight zone is that imaginary line that as you approach these animals, that they start to move away from you, okay? On that diagram, there's also a magic point right behind the shoulder that if you're in front of that point, they move backwards, and if you're behind that point, they move forwards, okay? Which is absolutely true if there's no other forces acting on that animal, like they have a baby calf in another pen. It doesn't matter where you stand, they're going to the baby calf, okay? So, but that's just a simplistic, and you can see that as in these animals, as the intent of these round pens is that if you look, the backside is solid, okay? On the front side, that these animals can actually see you. The other thing for these is so we can get bars in behind the animals. And bars, and this is another thing, is like I said, there's pros and cons to everything. So when you're using a bar can be dangerous because when you stick it in, if you don't get it locked in the other side, if that cow backs up, it's a place to pin you, okay? So you just have to be aware. Another option are backstops. So you'll see them hanging in the pins, and as the animal walks under, it prevents them from backing up. Some cattle don't like them. They balk at them. Some producers just don't like them. And so those are some different facility designs, just ideas. See what works for you. Again, flexibility can be your friend. Some of those work, some of them don't. But with cattle handling, it's about safety. Low stress cattle handling is kind of a term, really. When I grew up, every time we worked cattle, it was a timed event. It was how fast could we get done. If we had 5 cows, we wanted to be back at the house in 20 minutes, you know. We really didn't have a clock, but everything was forced. It was intense. We were moving those cattle, okay? When you're working with livestock, just like when I came out here today, I didn't know, I had never been out here. I didn't know where I was supposed to go. So I was not very secure, okay? The cattle are the same way in a new set of facilities, okay? If you use your facilities once a year to give shots, to deworm, to palpate, and all of that's done one time a year, those cattle associate this facility with pain, okay? The other thing is if they come in here once a year or you've changed something, they don't know where you want them to go. So the first time we brought these cows in and we turned them around, it took a while for them to get turned around to come up the alley. Well, you just saw today, this time, now next time it may not work, but this time they came in and everybody went right into the alley. If I didn't have the bar in the way, they would have flowed just right up the alleyway, just like they were supposed to, okay? And so them knowing what you want is important. Okay? And I think that if you're intense and you're trying to push, you can cause a lot of problems that way. Another thing that just to touch on while we have it here is what I use or what I recommend using when we're handling cattle. And here we've got a paddle over here. So there's a lot of different things that you can use when you're working with cattle. And again, they all have pros and cons, okay? I typically like either a stick or a flag. These paddles to me are a little heavy. But all this isn't a tool to either hit or to prod the animals necessarily. It's just an extension of my arm. So I'm able to touch these animals when they're in that pen, to let them know I'm there, without being close enough to get kicked or stepped on, because a lot of times these cows aren't wanting to hurt you, but they're big animals, okay? And so this is just an extension of my arm to allow me to come into contact and put pressure on these animals without me being in the way. This does the same thing. It kind of gives it a lot. Well, the rattles have fallen out of this one. So it usually rattles, but it's just something visual that you can put in front of their face to slow them down or things like that. Again, if we're using it like this, something's went wrong, okay? Now, the next thing is a hot shot. This can be kind of polarizing in a group. So it's a tool, okay? Just like any tool, it can be used improperly or it can be a great benefit to us, okay? So the advantage to a hot shot is that it hurts the animal, it does not injure the animal, okay? There's no lasting effects after you let go of the button on that animal, okay? Well, and that's where when you see somebody using it improperly or just holding it on animals, I mean, that's ridiculous and it's unnecessary, okay? That's when the tool gets used wrong. But it's like an electric fence. Right. It hurts you, but it doesn't injure you. And that's a great advantage with electric fence, and I really like. But if you've got, and anytime we're looking about working facilities or handling cattle, we always talk about docility, okay? Or how docile or how crazy an animal is. And so a lot of times we've swung that pendulum back from these wild animals to where they're so docile. And some of these are old show heifers, and so they get stubborn and they just don't want to move, okay? So you either have the option of winding that tail up, or hitting them, or that's where these sticks we start, having to hurt the animal or injure the animal to move it. Whereas if we've got a hot shot or something like that, it can be a proper motivation to get those animals to go ahead and move in and flow through our system, okay? So again, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just a tool that we can use. Now, this is one that I probably would recommend you staying away from. This is old show stick, okay? And show sticks, again, they have their place in the show ring. But when we're working animals, there's too many things that can happen when we have hooks and sharp points that we just don't need when we're working cattle, okay? And so these are something that I recommend. Now, again, if you don't have anything else, but I would probably, that's something I would try to stay away from as far as that.